So you just finished your first draft. Congratulations. That is a huge step on getting your book published. But now that you're done with your first draft, what do you do next? Hi, my name is Willow Asteria. I am a dark fantasy romance author, and I have some tips and tricks for you on how to prepare your book to get ready to go to your professional editor. Because once you're done your first draft, it is definitely not ready to go. The first thing that I do when I am done with my first draft, I will go through the document and I will check to see if I left myself any notes. An example of a note that I would leave myself is, so I'm a pantser, and my last first draft that I wrote was for a project called The Sacrifice of Arrows. And there is a scene where they are falling. They're like from these islands that are like floating up in the sky. They fell, they're falling. And they're looking at this forest below them. And, the main character, she is noting things that she sees. Well, later, down the line, I decided that there was an obelisk in the center of the forest. So while I'm writing that scene where I'm mentioning said obelisk, I quickly scrolled back up to the previous chapter where they were falling, and I added myself a very quick note. Add that she saw obelisk in center of forest. And then I scrolled back down and I continued right where I was. And so I will go through and I will add anything. If I left a note, I will go ahead and I will address that now as soon as I am done my first draft. The next thing that I will do is I will send off that work to my alpha readers. If you're not familiar with what alpha readers are, that is totally okay. We will have another video following up here about alpha beta arcs and what are the difference from those. So make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on those videos. But for this purpose here, alpha readers are readers who you will send your work to prior to any self-editing being done. So a lot of those times, some people send them chapter by chapter or, a couple chapters at a time. I like to send it once I am done the first draft. And that, whatever works best for you and your, if you do choose to use alpha readers, you can do that at that. You can either do all in one go like I do, or you can do chapter by chapter, whichever works best for you. And when my alpha readers have the document, I use Google Docs for this, so I'll just add them to a Google Doc as a commenter. I do not look at the document the entire time it is with my alpha readers, so I will give them a deadline. For example, for the Sacrifice of Arrows, the book that I mentioned earlier, it is currently with my alpha readers, and I gave them until July the 1st, which by the time this video comes out, it'll be after that date. So I will not look at it throughout that time. When July 1st hits, I will start to go through all of the notes that the alpha readers left. So first I'll go through any sort of grammatical things. So typos, commas, anything grammatical. I will go through those first because those are the super easy ones to get out of the way. And then I'll go back and I'll, address any other comments. So let's say that I have a scene, and these comments can vary, book to book. But let's say I have a scene where I wasn't very clear on what was going on, or there's a hand here and a hand here and a hand here. You got too many hands if your characters are human. I don't know what your characters are, but if your character's human, you only got two hands. You can't have a hand here, here, and here. So, if an alpha reader left a note like that, those would be things I addressed. Or, hey, there's not enough visual imagery here. Things like that. So parts where you have to go back in and add more details, clarification on things. That's what I would do second in regards to alpha notes. So once those alpha notes are complete, and I'm all done with that, the next thing that I will do is I will start at the very top of the document and go all the way through, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, and vary up those sentence starts. So the first thing that I do is, I just start with paragraph number 1. What is going on, and I will look at how I start with those sentences. I write in first person, so I have a lot of I sentences, I verb. I saw, I felt, And a lot of those you can cut out. For example, I'm going to make something up really quickly. I watched Fred walk across the hall. Fred walked across the hall. You don't need to say, I watched. You could just say, Fred walked across the hall. It's one way to vary up your sentences. But again, you would need to address what works best for you and your manuscript. But yep, so I will start at the top and I will go all the way down and vary up those sentence structures a little bit. That way it is, engaging for the reader, because nobody wants to read, I walked the dog, I went across the street, I saw a pelican. Like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So once I am done with varying up those sentence structures, the next thing I will do is I will run my manuscript through a program called Grammarly. And what Grammarly does is exactly what it says, grammar. So it will help with, all sorts of grammar issues. You do want to make sure that, you're just double checking things, because it is like any computer program, not 100%. But a lot of the times the suggestions are very, very helpful. So run it through Grammarly and see what it says. A lot of authors also use a program called Pro Writing Aid. I do not use Pro Writing Aid, but I have heard that it is very helpful for a lot of authors. So if you do choose to check that out, this is where I would use it. I would use it prior to using Grammarly. So I would do Pro Writing Aid and then I would use Grammarly, because Pro Writing Aid is more kind of helps with that previous step that I talked about a little bit. So varying up those sentence starts, flow, things like that. So I would use Pro Writing Aid and then Grammarly. The next thing I will do is I will do Control F in the document and I will search for a couple of different things. The first thing is going to be passive verbs. So those hads, those began tos, things like that. A lot of the times we use had plus a past tense verb. A lot of times we don't need that first had. So go through, drop all of those off. The began tos, I'm really bad at my began tos. They began to do this, they began to do that. But did they do it? Did they do it? Or did they stop in the middle because they got interrupted by an elephant running into the room? So once I go through those, and any other words that I think that I use way, way too much, body parts for spice scenes, things like that, I will go through and, search those words up. Another big one with the Control F is double space. That just helps, a lot of the times, Grammarly will catch some of them, but I learned that Grammarly does not catch all of them. So Control F, double space, find out all those extra spaces that are accidentally put into your manuscript and get rid of them. Once I'm done all of those steps, I leave my manuscript to be ready to go to my self-editor. Now, make sure you subscribe, because the next video will be on what do you do once you get those edits back from your professional editor. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I hope you learned something fantastic, and I hope that these tips will help you with your writing.